Welcome to Life on Life's Terms. This is the sixth episode of season one, and we're sitting here with a guy who's been divorced. We're going to talk a little bit about what that what the separation looked like between him and his ex, and whereas all the things happened with his children, and how they came to a place where they realized they weren't able to be with each other anymore. For anonymity purposes, we're going to call this guy Aaron, and whether that be his real name or not, you just put whatever in that you need to put in for a name. So we're going to start this Life on Life's Terms episode with the first question of what happened. And I'd just like you to introduce yourself, Aaron, and give a little bit of synopsis of who you are for the listeners.
So my name is Aaron. I'm a dude. I'm a divorced guy.
Would you say you're your regular average Joe, and your story is one of a million that's pretty well the same?
Yeah, I think in the industry that I work in, the place that I live, it's pretty generic for the age, the culture that we live in. I wouldn't say it's anything extraordinary.
So would you say that you're the typical North American man eating beef, getting divorced, and having children?
It's a good possibility, yeah.
So how did the separation happen? At what point in the marriage did you and your significant or ex-significant other start parting ways?
I think it was a fractured relationship to begin with, but I'd say probably about a year before everything went down, that's kind of the emotional detachment happened more on her part. I kind of suspected things were happening, but I didn't, I was kind of, maybe I was more Pollyanna, hoping things would turn around and, just a rough patch and we'll get better. Eventually she'll come around. But I look back on it now, it was like she had in her heart, she was done. So I was just like, okay.
So what age did you guys get married at about?
I was in my late 20s and she was a teenager.
So so the age gap is what, maybe 5-6 years?
7.5 years.
Okay. So in that time, do you think that age had any play into the split itself, or was it just that you both kind of grew apart from each other emotionally and spiritually, and just gained different interests? I guess essentially my question is, were you guys just too damn young to get married, really, do you think?
I don't think so myself. I don't think she was in a place where she could probably get married, like psychologically speaking. I think she had an idea in her head of what she wanted to do, and she executed it. And I was probably naive or wasn't totally sure what her plans were. Maybe we hadn't fully communicated those ideas to each other. I feel like I was a little more simplistic, traditional in my outlook. I thought she was traditional too because she came from a really conservative, traditional family. And so I thought she was just going to carry on the torch that her mother and her grandmother had done. And I thought, it was just going to be like that. I didn't.
So let me ask you then, how many kids do you have together?
4.
And age gap?
Between 10 and 4 right now.
Excellent. So how many years have you and your ex been separated? How long have you guys been separated / divorced, I guess?
Over 2.5 years.
Okay, so the youngest one's half of their life you guys have been separated, almost about?
Yeah.
And so the catalyst into the separation, what did that look like emotionally?
For me, it was, well, I guess, like when the actual announcement was. Is that what you mean?
Well, the build up to.
Well, I guess it was a lot of friction and a lot of anxiety, a lot of uncertainty, helplessness, powerlessness. Trying to, it's like you're trying to wish something to be better, but it's not getting better. It's just getting worse and worse. And trying to cling to hope, but the hope seems to vaporize or disappear, and so you're just trying to come up with a different narrative, I guess, in life.
So and you were saying that this kind of happened towards the birth of your younger children.
Yeah, there was always conflict. There was never a real full agreement. It was more of an imposition I felt on her part. But I think after the twins were born, she had her 4 kids, and I think my part was done, and there was no real need for me anymore. So it was kind of this eventual casting away. It felt like, I guess.
So let's talk about infidelity. Do you think infidelity played a part in the build-up to the actual separation? Or was there any infidelity prior to the actual separation?
Not really. I think the infidelity happened after she just cut emotional ties from me and was done with me.
So there was infidelity then?
Eventually,
yeah. So was that infidelity, should we say, like, in the modern term, not like, did that occur after you guys were separated? Because in a modern term, that's not really fidelity in the new world, so to say, when it comes to, I mean, sure, technically you guys are still married, but, you're separated as well.
Yeah,
so
we weren't emotionally attached.
Yeah.
I think she moved on, finding her, she had in her heart that it was onto a new phase, and I was going to have to find my own path, and I was free to do that. She wouldn't hold no grudges against me.
That's just the way it was.
It was like a breakup type of thing. It was just, like, I thought it was marriage, and it felt coming from her like we were just dating, and this isn't going to work out. So I'm just going to find somebody else here who's more to my liking.
So let's also unpack this in the context of time understanding. So let's talk about the physical separation as opposed to the emotional and mental separation. How long would you figure that the emotional and spiritual separation happened prior to the physical separation?
Probably a year and a half, I imagine.
So tell me what a typical day looked like, having to deal with that. Like, what did it look like in the house when you were around her and the children were there? So if I was looking outside, looking into the house, what would that have looked like?
Like before she wanted to separate?
Yeah.
So I get up for work and go to work, come back home at 4 o'clock, and the house would be a disaster. There'd be kids in the living room, and she would say, "Well, I'm checking out. I'm gonna go upstairs into my room, watch some TV. You make supper and do the house chores, look after the kids." And then, so I did that. Would go get some groceries, maybe make supper, put the kids to bed, read them bedtime stories. Then she came out, and she might go visit friends, or she just continue up in her room, or I might go just watch TV downstairs.
So in playing devil's advocate, so to say, would you say that maybe she was dealing with some sort of depression at that time, or she wasn't very engaged? Because it doesn't sound like to me that there was any physical engagement towards caring or loving for each other in that particular moment, right?
Yeah, it was. I'm not, like I said, I don't think she was psychologically capable of having a fully committed relationship, or what I would expect to be a healthy relationship.
Yeah. And how were you mentally at that time?
I was probably overwhelmed and swamped and depressed and probably OCD and helpless, like it's that helpless, powerless despair. And, I was estranged from my family, so I had no family or friends to, for support.
So let's talk about that. How did the estrangement between you and your family happen?
When she was pregnant with our firstborn, she didn't like my family and felt they were too dangerous, and I needed to cut ties off with them. And if I didn't do that, then we were going to have to get divorced then. And so I figured, well, I vowed a marriage, so I'll stick it out. And
so you placated to that.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a lot of the negative stuff. Obviously, there had to have been some sort of positivity in order to stay together for the first 2 years, at least, of the marriage. How did that look?
when we were married.
Yeah, like when it was going good. How did that? Give me a picture of what that looked like.
The good parts.
Yeah.
Well, she wanted kids, and so there's lots of tail, and that was fun.
No beating around the bush, right?
Well,
I mean,
I mean, that was the whole reason why I wanted to be married. Other than that, I wouldn't put up with a woman for that.
I'm glad you can be honest. So, what did courtship look like? Was there any indication at courtship that this might have been like it sounds like to me it was a fairly toxic relationship at the end. I mean, hence the reason why you guys separated and eventually divorced, right? I mean, this is only the setup to the system of what separation looks like and what divorce looks like in the system that we're set up in now. I mean, effectively, this episode of a podcast is to talk about men's rights and what it looks like with the lack of support that men have emotionally to get through these times of divorce and separation and some of the crosses to bear or the wounds that we endure going through the court system, So obviously we can see that this relationship itself at this moment is pretty toxic, right? And in that toxicity, I guess my question is, was there any indication in courtship and in the early part of your marriage, so sort of say like the honeymoon stage of your marriage, was there any indication that it could have went sideways the way that it did go sideways?
Like when we were dating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I look back on it now. I'd probably say yes, there was. I just didn't. I didn't recognize it at that time, as I thought it was just more immaturity. I thought eventually she'd grow out of it. She would mature, especially when she had children. Get her head on straight. And and I asked my parents at the time we were dating. Is there any? And I guess that was kind of a question that answered itself eventually in time. But I just want to make sure, not trusting on my own judgment. Could other people see what I'm not seeing, or just because maybe my emotions are getting the better of my judgments.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, no, she looks like she's respectable, comes from a good family, so the likelihood of you two succeeding looked like it was going to work out well. And hindsight, after we got married, and even after we got divorced, and we kind of talked about the aftershocks, is that she hid her personality disorder very well. Like she looked like she was healthy and normal, but she was hiding what the real story was. So it come across as a big lie, but it's you have a year and a half, you think.
Yeah. I guess it boils down to, and I mean, I think we all do this. I mean, I've heard for you to be the best man that you could be, walk around like you're going to get laid all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Because that is the best version of you. And the reason why we as men peacock in the way that we peacock is because we want women to like those qualities that we have as masculinity, right? And I think women probably do the same thing. Like they really try to show the domestication or whatever or their independence or whatever it may be that they feel is their best quality. They'll peacock that out, and then we have what we have, right? And then eventually what ends up happening in a relationship is it's not the landscape that we perceived it to be. It's actually a completely different landscape than what it really is, right? And I think that's really unfortunate that both sides do that. So could you say that kind of played a role in the beginning of this relationship prior to getting divorced, that you both were kind of trying to be the best versions of yourself, but in reality it was a facade as opposed to being a reality?
I felt that she did that more than I did. I thought I'd try to be my most genuine self. I wasn't really much of a peacocker. I had a new truck, I tried to impress her with that, and I got this, I'm a big pipe fitter, making lots of money, so I can provide type of bravado. But I kind of felt that I tried to show my genuine self. This is who I genuinely was at that time, and I think she did. I think she did that too, as far as she was concerned. I don't think she was anything malicious. That it's just the nature of her personality, I think, is what, like, once I actually got to live with her, then I could see how it, fleshed out. It wasn't, like it was evil, but it wasn't really willfully, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's just if you're fat and lazy, some people are just they don't want to work hard, and I think she just had a way of.
You're gonna get me in a bunch of trouble with fat shaming now.
Well,
I just see it now.
I mean, it's just a case of, some people, there's different displays of personality, and that was just her personality, and it's just, I just happened to be the victim of that, whatever that was, and.
So here you guys are with 4 children, and shit's obviously going sideways in the marriage. How did the actual physical separation happen? Just the bare bones of it.
Well, I just came home one night and kids were in bed and she was on the couch and said, "I think we're just gonna have to separate." And I said, "I'm like, okay."
So was this like one of the nights that she actually did something before you got home?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
and the kids.
It was just like, wait, what? And I said, "You don't want to work on things?" And she said, "No, I think we're past the point of no return." So I was like, "Oh, okay." So it didn't really hit me until she got the mattress and then she forced me down to the basement. And,
so how did you feel about that?
I felt like Jesus carrying his cross onto Calvary type of thing.
Yeah.
Instead I was going downstairs into the basement.
Yeah.
And she wasn't helping. She was just ordering me and I acted like a little bitch. I didn't really fight back. I guess it was that Christian turning the other cheek. Oh,
Did she? Was she engaged or engaging with other men at that time when you were living in the basement?
When we first went down, I think she was trying. I don't think she was. I think she was looking for a guy. I don't think she just was.
Did you recognize that at the time?
Yeah, because she was going out all the time, and I just presumed that she didn't really want to work on us, that she was looking for somebody else. And then she kind of name dropped some guy's name, or some friend's husband or boyfriend knows how to fix cars so well, and so I'm kind of giving her the side look, like, what's that about?
So did you feel a little bit, I guess, emasculated?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Did you feel emasculated at all prior to like these rocky waters at all in your relationship with her?
Oh,
yeah. In what context? Like, how did that come about?
Well, just that I would never get to go to the restaurants that I wanted to, the movies that I wanted to, taking the activities I wanted to, see my family, see any of my friends. It was always her friends, her family, her activities, her interests, her restaurants, her TV shows. And it just, I guess I accommodated it. I didn't really resist it that hard, just to keep the relationship going, I guess.
So it seems to me that you tried to placate as much as you could, but I mean, let's face it, I would suggest that you're not, your name isn't Jesus Christ and you're all perfect.
No.
So I'm sure you did your fair share of contributing. How could you see that you contributed towards the demise of this relationship?
I'm not sure. That's one of those coulda, shoulda, woulda moments. Like I don't really have a lot of big regrets in my life. But probably the one biggest regret I have in my life is getting married. I've done a few sins that I'm not too proud of, or I'm ashamed of. But from what I look back and said, well, I learned something from that. Mm-hmm. This one feels like I didn't really learn anything, and it just feels like I'm just having to bear the punishment for committing it. Even though I felt like I was doing it with good intentions, like this is one of those things that you go to work and get a career, and you grow up and you get married, you have kids. Like it's just a rite of passage. Like I didn't think I was going to have to get punished for doing something that I thought I was doing honest. Like I wasn't being malevolent to marrying her. I just thought this is what you do, and I was in love, and I thought she was in love, and
yeah. I mean, I think that's the other thing too is we as men in this younger generation, I think we really mess up, or we really miss the boat between love and infatuation. I think we sometimes get that really misconstrued, and it brings us to really shitty relationships. And I'm not suggesting that that's what your relationship was. I'm speaking on a personal note. I know, like, when I'm in a lot of my past relationships with women, it was not really that I was ever in love. It was more infatuation. I just I just wanted those needs met, really, and I would say anything I could say, like, in order to get that, right? And I know even in my own case, when it came down to being common law married, same idea. I said whatever I had to say, and basically I had a hole all the time when I came home. Like that's what it was. And it's when I look at it, it's very disrespectful. And saying that, and even knowing that that's where my thinking was, but I guess I just never really had a model of what true affection and true love really is. I had observed mostly shitty relationships because I'd seen shitty relationships. I thought that that was the model. You know what I mean? I didn't recognize that that's a shitty relationship. I just recognized that shit, they're this is what my aunt and my uncle are doing. Must be it's working for them. They've been married for how long? But really, there's no real respect in that. Like they weren't really in love, so to say. And I think this is what's happening time and time again. We're really the second generation of divorce. We're not the first generation. I mean, our parents generation is one of the first generations that where it was okay just to walk away from the relationship, and there was really shitty consequences of that. And I think we're starting to see the fruits, or see the poisonous berries from it today.
Well, I mean, like when you really think about it, it's like to think that a marriage lasts forever. It's almost like, in theory, yeah, that's what you say, but the reality is like, I just don't really see that generally. You see the odd couple in a church and stuff like that, and you're like, oh, isn't that sweet? But you're like, well, how quaint is that for me? Like, it's just like, it doesn't seem real.
I think it turned our generation into a cynical view.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? We're like, yeah, right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's forever the fucking tattoo I have on my arm.
Yeah.
That's a commitment.
Yeah.
This bullshit about some other person, it's more of a commitment than the relationship I have with that person.
Yeah.
It's called divorce.
Yeah.
That's fucking forever.
Well, it's like Louis C.K. said, you know what the difference between marriage and divorce is?
What's that?
Divorce is forever.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really where we're at now, and taking a look at your personal situation, or the journey that you took in that beginning. I don't think that this is a one-off story.
Oh.
I think this is a lot of men. I think in today's world, a lot of men don't want to say, that this is the way that they feel, or this is the way that they felt through their marriage, and have to deal with those kinds of consequences, and the fact that really we don't have a good model. We do not have a good model of what a good marriage looks like. And because of that, this is the consequence. All of our generation is getting divorced. Nobody knows. Like you talk to an old couple and they say, oh, you'll get marriage. You'll understand it when you guys go through all these trials and tribulations and you're together. And we're like, our generation's like, fuck that.
Well, I mean, if I really to take a really strong hard look at it, most of our generation really isn't getting married.
Yeah.
It's like there's the couple of, the keener, the rich, put together people who want to keep up appearances, I would say, are doing that. But I say for the most part, most people live in common law, having casual relationships, and some are just foregoing relationships, period. Like, it's just like, why bother? Like, why?
And I think for men, I mean, we're seeing a lot of this in the news. Like, why are men not marrying women? Well, it's a fucking financial liability.
Yeah.
I mean, most men only have maybe $60,000 tucked away somewhere, and you want the bitch to sign a prenup. Like, that's ridiculous. And for us to live that way is crazy. And I'm not saying that women don't, or the children that are the product of a broken marriage shouldn't be afforded the financial security. I really believe that they should be, but I think also men should be afforded the ability to be there emotionally for their own children. And so I think this is the segue, I guess, into the next part of your story when we're looking at the court system, because eventually you had to get you guys did obviously go to court, and you are now officially divorced. Hence the picture with Aaron signed in front of his face, keeping his anonymity, saying that he's divorced. So I think, one of the things that I'm going to build up here in the Canadian court system, it is typical that most men have what's called an emergency protective order against them. Also in Canada, typically a child protective services record or report is not entitled into family court in Canada. It's not supposed to be pushed into court. The only time that it is if a emergency protection order has been placed. Typically, the way how this works in the Canadian court system is it goes from what we would call a justice of the peace to a Q-back judge. Being a Q-back judge, that means Court of Queen's Bench. That's what that is. And she has or he has the jurisdiction ruling over the territory or province that you're in within the direct geographical area that you're in. They basically have the authority and the power of the court over the land of Canada. Effectively is what that means. So let's just set it up. How did the separation look for you? Who was where, and how did things change? So who was where when you first broke up? How did that look like? What did that look like?
So when I had to leave the house?
Before that, I guess.
Well, like when we first announced the separation, it was just that she stayed upstairs, I stayed in the basement.
Yeah.
Stayed in their own bedrooms. Nothing to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I got, I had an emotional outburst, but I guess it was just kind of that cry of helplessness and there's nothing much I could do about it. So.
Mm-hmm. And so what happened after the emotional falling out? We'll call it that.
Well, not much happened after that. It was just, get your stuff together, like from my ex, and it was like, oh, okay. And just kind of stopped and repressed my emotions further.
And so where did you go when you left the place that you and her were in together?
So I lived with my folks for 6 months.
So now let's look at that. How long were you estranged from your parents due to this marriage and now having to go back to them? What did that look like?
So it was 7 years without them. And then it was just kind of a forced reacquaintance, very quick, catching up and things that happened in our family, and, the comings and goings. I discussed my life, and it was strange and nervous. I was nervous. Like it was, this is people that I knew so well, but I hadn't seen in 7 years. It was weird. It was kind of like, is this even really happening? Almost like, and then going into the bed that I slept in when I was 4 years old, like it's just like an immediate throwback. But it had been like 10 years. It was weird, I guess.
So did you feel like on your way to your parents' house that you were almost homeless? Or you were, effectively you were homeless in that moment.
I was just like, I could have had the option of staying at her parents' place or my parents' place. And
that would have been fucking weird, staying at her parents' house.
Well, they were my family for 7 years.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So it's just, she arbitrarily wanted to end it. And there's a place for you there if you don't like it.
Wow.
I think she wanted to, it felt like she wanted me to be at her parents so she could have a little bit of extra control over me. But my parents they really wanted me to say, no, she's not having that control over you anymore. So I opted for my parents. So it became like a real control issue, it felt like.
Wow. And so when you left that house, the emotional turmoil that was left behind, how impactful was that towards your children? Like what would they be seeing at that moment, do you think, if you were standing in their shoes?
It's hard to imagine because I think they've kind of shared a little bit, but not a whole lot. I think there's a lot of just don't talk about it. So I imagine that it's pretty traumatic for them, but I can't really gauge for them because I feel like you're just being like curiosity. You're just trying to gain ammo. I don't really want to do that to them. I just want them to know I'm still their dad and they're still my kids. But I can't really, I haven't really been able to get too close to them to figure out how it impacted them. So I'm pretty much in the dark on that.
Okay. So here you are at your folks' place.
Yeah.
For how long? You said 6 months, right?
Yeah.
So being there for 6 months, what was that like, having to be back with your folks again?
A little bit on the humiliating side.
Yeah.
Wasn't. I mean, it was cool, but it was at the same time. It just felt like I was being under their rules again and trying to be mindful of them, but kind of wanting my privacy. And it's just like, but that feeling of helplessness. Like I don't really have much elsewhere to go, so I gotta.
So were you working?
Yeah.
Were you contributing any financial income towards the children and her at that moment?
Yeah.
You were, right?
Yeah.
In the context of percentage, how much of the percentage of your paycheck went towards her household at that time?
Imagine maybe a quarter.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I was still paying for the mortgage, and well, I'll say half, maybe half my percentage, I guess.
So if we could say it in a term like what do you call that? When the government takes the money away from you.
Garnish.
Yeah, there you go. So garnish you of almost like 50%, 45% of your wages.
Yeah, but it was like take home. It wasn't as severe till after the edict.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get there. So at this moment, you guys really didn't have anything established as in regards to an agreement of custody or custody in regards to your children or financial obligations. That agreement hadn't been reached by this point, right?
Yeah, it was kind of more gentlemen's kind of imposed from Children and Family Services.
So, like I had suggested, is that many men in the Canadian system get what's called a emergency protective order. Did this happen in your case?
Eventually, yeah.
Yeah. How did that come about?
It was through the suggestion of Children and Family Services. They disagreed with me, and so they encouraged her to seek one out, and so she complied with their suggestion. And
so the question I have for you, really, when you and your ex are basically, I would suggest that it was maybe like, was it spatting? Were you guys spatting between each other, and then all of a sudden now you have this mediator in the middle called Child Family Services?
Well, they supposedly under the law or whatever, they have to get involved if there's a domestic dispute, and they figured police were involved, so there was a domestic dispute. There's children, so they had to get their opinions on everything.
So how did you feel about all that?
Helpless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just like what recourse do I have other than a lawyer? I was penniless, so I couldn't afford a lawyer. They felt that they could make their decisions to my family. I had a wife who was insistent upon this. She was insistent on the course of action, so whatever her will was, that's what transpired.
So let me ask you, the buildup into your separation, like not the physical separation, but the emotional separation, what did you guys financially, health-wise, look like? If you don't mind expressing.
All the time.
Yeah.
She was profligate. So I mean, it wasn't meaning she just spent. I laid the blame on her because I let her do it. I didn't really make a hard boundary for this, so I did it to keep the peace. But there was no money in the bank.
Mm-hmm. Were you guys on your way to a bankruptcy?
We had gone through a consolidation loan, but that eventually got paid off, and then she decided to end things.
So really, you guys were at 0.0.
Yeah.
Really, is where you were financially. Yeah. So let's speed up again to where you're paying almost 45-50% of your paycheck, and now you're looking at an EPO, which has been placed. And really, like I said, it sounds to me like it's And I kind of suggested it earlier that it's just a spat with a mediator in the middle. Because domestic, what we need to clear the air about what domestic is. In Canada, domestic doesn't necessarily mean that you've hit anybody. It doesn't even mean that you were verbally violent. Essentially, what domestic means in Canada as a legalese is that things were a little, not even really heated. A neighbor called the police. That's what it could mean. The neighbors heard that somebody's voice was raised because you have paper thin walls, and the police come to the door. That would then entail a domestic. Doesn't mean domestic assault. It doesn't. All it means is that it's a domestic issue. And as soon as that ends up happening, authorities are called when there's children in the home. So, in saying that, when you were placed with the EPO, were you told at that moment that you were placed with an EPO? Like, did you know? Did EPS? I mean, did any of those like entities of policing, so on and so forth, ever come and tell you that there was an EPO against you?
Yeah.
Okay. So but you didn't know when the hearing was happening or anything of that nature, right?
I knew it was earlier that day.
Okay. Were you invited to show up to that?
Yeah.
Wow. Eh? And then, so I guess later on, when you were actually standing in court, was that presented at that moment?
No.
Wow. So think about what that would mean in the moment, right? You really have no defense.
Yeah, it's just stay away from her. And if you decide to go near her, there will be legal consequences, like a day in jail. And then it just gets worse from there if you keep disobeying it. But it's a slippery slope. I mean, it's sometimes.
This also meant your children?
What's that?
This also meant your children?
Yeah.
And so when you went to court, was there any way to get a recourse from that? Were you able to apply in order for that to...
In theory, yes, but the practicality, I would say no.
Okay. So let's look at the first time you went to court after the EPO was placed. Did you have a lawyer at that moment?
No.
Were you afforded legal aid?
Yes.
Okay. When you were afforded legal aid, did you feel that the lawyer was competent?
I think so.
Yeah. Did you feel that it was fair when they were sitting on your side?
Yeah, it was okay.
Emotionally, where were you at the time?
I didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
It was just like I given up on life, pretty much, I think.
So would you say that you were in the grips of a depression?
Yeah, depression, despair.
Could you engage upon suicidal thought?
Yeah, I wanted to.
Yeah. So let's rebuild this in this moment. You have a protection order from the system, basically saying that you're not allowed to be around your children at all. I mean, fuck the ex-wife, who cares, right? But you're not allowed to be around the children. You are emotionally beat up. You're financially done. And any penny that you make, 45%, 50% at this moment still, would you say, is still going towards her?
Yeah, I think I was still voluntarily paying. There's no court imposition. It's gentleman's agreement at that time.
Okay.
I think at that time I just said I made the thing to sell the house. So I rid myself of the mortgage and I was just paying grocery bills. If she wanted to buy me out, she could go ahead.
So where are you living at this moment?
In the house that we were in.
So how did you get back into the house?
She abandoned it and left the key in the mailbox. And my parents went and made sure it wasn't trapped because there was still an EPO against me being in the house.
Oh, wow.
And they...
I mean, just to think of the paranoia.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I'm not sure what's going on. Like, I mean, it could have been, for all intents and purposes, she was innocent or, just like this was her way of moving on. But you never know. It's just... So I sent my parents as a decoy. They made sure the place wasn't trapped. And then we went in there and cleaned it all out, and I took possession of it and lived there since.
So there must have been some issue in relation to you having this kind of paranoia towards her, right? I mean, it's like most people wouldn't conceive of the idea that somebody's out to get them. But really, in this case, the reason why you're sending your parents there is because you were afraid that she was out to get you. Because if you were really confronted with her in that EPO and all of a sudden the police are called, you're going to jail.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no recourse from that. I mean, there's nothing you can say that says, well, she told me to come here, da 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 da, right?
Orders,
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
oh, yeah.
I mean, that's pretty crazy. So here you are now in court with an attorney that is afforded to you free by the Canadian taxpayer, and you feel that they're competent at the moment. And what did that look like while you were in court? What were you expecting out of that court hearing?
To actually make a hearing argument for it.
So an argument towards what?
Keeping it.
Keeping what?
The order going.
Like the EPO unit.
Yeah.
Okay. So really the only business that was there for court was the EPO.
Yeah.
What ended up coming out of it?
They just deferred the decision. They never made a decision.
Huh. So then you were given another court date to come back.
Yeah.
So when you went back the second time, you are back into your place. And is the Protective Services for Children and Family, are they still involved at this time?
I think the case might have been closed by then. Maybe. I can't remember.
So how long at this point has it been since you've seen your kids?
In the back of my house. 6 months.
So 6 months. And now we're going into the second court hearing. How long would it have been?
Well, we're getting mixed up because there's two streams. One's the EPO and one's the divorce and custody.
Yeah.
So if we're going, there was, I don't think they ever went to the second. Well, there's the first one where I didn't have a lawyer. The second one I had a lawyer. They deferred it into a few months later, and I think they canceled it because the order got vacated.
Oh, okay.
But
okay.
Then there was the other stream of the actual custody and imposition of child support and.
Okay. So if you were to have called your ex in order to gain access to your children, what would have happened?
She would have denied me, and if I would have made a physical confrontation, I would be going to jail.
What about over the phone?
I'm not sure.
Could you have gone to?
Well, we weren't talking on the phone. We weren't talking to each other at all.
Wow, eh?
There was no contact. I didn't want anything to deal with her, and she didn't want anything to deal with me.
So in that EPO, if you had contacted her by phone, could you have gone to jail then?
I suppose.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's absolutely yes, but I had the fear that I could, so I didn't want to push it.
And before this 6 month stretch of not seeing your children, what was the longest stretch you had not seen your children when you and her were living in the same house?
Maybe 3 weeks.
Wow.
But I mean, I was talking with them on the phone because I always kind of work out of town every now and then, and so, but I talk with them every night.
But nowhere near 6 months.
No.
So
no
what I'm getting at is, prior to this, you were there all the time.
Let me rephrase that. I was actually seeing them for about 4 months after we separated. I was seeing them at her parents' place. So I get to see them for a couple hours every.
So let me get this straight. You have to see your kids at her parents' place.
Yeah.
The woman that you are divorcing.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what that looked like. How did you deal with that? I mean, were they amicable towards you? Her parents?
Oh yeah, her parents would get along.
Was she there during? No. Okay, so why is it that you had to have supervision? What put you in a place that all of a sudden you have to have supervision? Because that's what it sounds like to me. And did you have to have supervision?
She didn't trust me. She felt that I will introduce them to my parents, who she's definitely afraid of, and I'll teach them wrong things that she disagrees with, and so
Wow.
it's conditional. If I want to see my children, I listen to her edicts.
So how in the hell did she be? How in the hell did she have all these rights to make these suggestions and ultimately the way it was, the authority in order for you to be able to see your kids? What gave her that kind of authority?
Children's Family Services
Wow.
sympathized with her, and they kind of reassured her that her opinion was correct. And
Wow. So was there any recourse that you could have done in order to be able to not have supervision at that time?
take her to trial.
And that would have costed you what? Round figures.
I imagine 50 grand or so.
Holy shit.
That's what they say going to Court of Queen's Bench trial, and that's what she was willing to. She was willing to go toe to toe against me. She probably would have lost, but I mean, you got to come with 50 grand in order for my lawyer, to put up a fight.
Because at this time you had lost the legal aid because you make too much money for legal aid,
Yeah.
really. So now you've retained your own lawyer.
Yeah.
And your own lawyer is saying that you would have to pay, well, it sounds like about $50,000 in order to go to trial, right?
Yeah.
Just to gain access.
Well, that's for a judicial order for me to see my kids without parental supervision, and I would actually have to have my psychological assessment and have all my ducks in a row. And the way the court system works is that it's very slow and very eternal. Doesn't the wheels of justice turn slowly, and it's just as true in family courts.
So let's look at the time you went to court and they told you how much alimony you were going to pay.
Right.
In percentage, how much of your paycheck was gone?
Like just the alimony, or just the alimony and child support?
All of it, alimony and child support.
Oh, I'd say if I'm working, it's over half my paycheck goes to her.
So 65%?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. Maybe. Now, how much does your lawyer take of your paycheck? By percentage?
Well, it depends how often he works. It could be 100%. It could be. So I had to use it very sparingly, so I can, because I have to pay for my mortgage and food and transportation, get to work.
So it's a huge financial obligation.
Oh yeah.
And is there any way to lessen that burden?
The legal burden?
Well, the financial burden.
Well, by going to court, which is the same as seeing my kids.
It's going to cost you money in order for it to happen.
Yeah.
So effectively, you're paying your lawyer, you're paying alimony and child support, and through that alimony, does your ex have legal aid for her lawyer, or is she paying her lawyer? Do you know?
I'm not sure the exact. I surmise that she's paying her lawyer, but she.
So let me ask you: is she working?
No.
So how can she afford to pay her lawyer?
With her boyfriend.
So when did she meet her boyfriend? When did she meet her boyfriend?
A couple months before I got kicked out of the house.
So that's what I was saying about the infidelity, right?
Yeah.
So he's there.
Yeah.
While you're there. Essentially.
It was friends until I get kicked out, then he moves in.
So he was your friend?
No, it wasn't my friend, it was her friend.
Oh, okay.
However you want to define that relationship, they knew each other. She secured herself a man, kicked me out, moved him in.
Oh my god.
And just kind of took off where I left off.
Wow. So then here we are in court, and you're paid you're told to pay that more than 65% of your wage is going to go towards alimony and child support.
Correct.
So now let me ask you, in your friends' world, how many of your friends have this same financial obligation?
I'd say probably more than half of them.
Wow, eh?
Like I said, it's if I think about the guys who are my age, in my demographic where I live, it's run of the mill.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I think society wise, this is an epidemic. You
Well, it's
know,
everywhere, yeah.
like I mean, I think really men are put into a place where we're just a paycheck when we go through the court system.
Well, that's the best interest of the child is your money.
Yeah, yeah.
And can care less about the emotional bonding or.
And so at this time, even like personally for you, were you able to see your children while you're paying child support and alimony?
Like when I get back to my house?
Yeah.
No.
So how long did it take you for you to be able to gain access to your children?
I went 8 months without seeing or talking to them.
And so how were you able to gain access?
By securing a supervisor that she approved of. And we arranged for our lawyers, and she approved. And it was
So you had to pay for the negotiation of that as well, I would assume?
Yeah.
And she's paying her lawyer.
Yeah.
And not working.
Yeah.
How the hell is it just it baffles me.
Yeah.
That's baffling to me, you know?
Well, it's frustrating.
So how is there any recourse for you to get your financial, like your alimony and child support refinanced? Is there an application or ability to do that? And how much would it cost you to file that kind of application?
I'm not sure. I think you can use the maintenance enforcement program, and under Canadian law, spousal support is a tax deduction, so you get the refund in next year's taxes, and you can put it towards that if you wanted to. But yeah, I don't know. Other than that, I'm not sure.
Wow, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know, that really is. It's a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah.
So here you are 8 months without seeing your kids. What did the first interaction, what was that like with your kids?
Very surreal.
Yeah.
It was surreal, but very familiar at the same time, just as much as coming into my parents. Kind of that same experience, probably not to that same degree, but that same, I finally get to see like the fight is over.
How were you emotionally?
At that time?
Yeah.
Well, I was probably pretty beat.
Yeah.
Pretty defeated.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not much I can do. It's just like whatever.
I can sympathize. I definitely feel better. You know, like, yeah, I'm very sympathetic towards that. I could even imagine empathy in standing in that place. Yeah. You know what I mean?
It was weird seeing the twins come out to me. They were the first ones to say daddy. And they were 2.5 the last time they saw me, and now they're 3.5 years old, and they remember what I looked like and who I was. That was pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. I mean, it's strange how, and I mean, up to this point, you were a part of those children's lives for majority of the time.
Yeah, I was there every day.
You know, I would almost want to, if I could, be a fly on the wall to see what it's like with mom's friend coming over to, like, just before you were kicked out, like if the kids were catching on to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I
like
imagine they was like the older ones, but it's like I said. Sometimes you can into it. Sometimes you don't know. Maybe other people have different forms of naivete. Like you just have no idea what's going on. It's just like you just I can empathize, but I haven't really been able to give a psychological assessment to see how they're coping with it. And
well, I guess even as a parent, you kind of have a bit of an intuition about that kind of stuff.
A little bit, yeah, but since then it's been very separated. I don't get in too deep with their lives. I don't.
Still now, eh?
Yeah. Like I ask them questions, how you doing at school, who's your friends, but I don't really know who their friends are. They're just names. Are
they allowed to tell you what school they go to? Do you know what school they go to?
Yeah.
When in the time of the EPO and all that stuff, did you know where your children were going to school then?
No. Well, maybe the first part of it, but then afterwards they moved in. Then I didn't know.
How about today? Do you know where your children live today?
Right now I do, but they're gonna be moving right away, so I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. How long did it take you to find out where they were living?
Probably over 2 years.
My God.
But it was only through happenstance. She didn't really intend for that information to be known, but then I don't know why. I don't know why they're moving. They're just moving. So
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah.
I mean, as involved as you were as a father prior to, would you say that you were an involved father? Like, did you know about their personal life prior to the separation slash divorce?
No.
So you knew their kids were, you knew all that stuff.
Yeah.
And now it's an alienation almost.
Yeah. Oh,
Wow, eh?
yeah.
Wow. Do you think that that will ever go away in time?
I imagine when they're older, but
Yeah.
I'm not sure it'll be. I kind of, I hope for the best, but you never, you can't predict the future. I roll with the punches now. It's whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I try not to get too despondent or too cynical about it. If it happens, great. If not,
So let me ask you: would you be willing to get married again?
theoretically yes, but it's the reality of the practice is kind of that's what sets me on edge.
Yeah.
Like they could be a perfectly rational woman. I could be perfectly psychologically healthy, but I just don't. There's so many cultural forces out there that you got no control over, and
So let me ask you: in the grips and the depths of this thing, how low were your lows?
it felt pretty low. I can't begin to describe how despairing that was.
Yeah.
You're trying to cling on to hope and all that, and they say just have hope, look another day, you see the light is. I couldn't see nothing at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the darkest period I think in my life. So
Uh-huh. So what about obviously obviously we had discussed suicidal thoughts.
yeah, I would call it ideation. Or
Okay.
yeah, I
If
wasn't.
there was a men's group of men on the side that you're at now, like you've lived through it, life is, I would hope, better. It sounds like it is.
Yeah.
But if you were surrounded with men who had gone through this, do you think that it wouldn't have been as low as it was? Would you have seen some light at the end of the tunnel? Is what I'm getting at.
I'm not sure because it's like kind of like maybe in the army you go through battle school and basic training, and the soldiers who've gone on the other side they've done it, and they can say, oh yeah, you'll get through it, but in the midst of that time you can't see the graduation day. You're just like, this is hell, but I can't do this until you cross that line.
Mm-hmm.
That's how the best I would describe it. I know it might be a poor example, but that's
I think if those are your words, that's the example that you can provide. I think it's great.
yeah.
I mean, let me ask you, what would your advice be to somebody who is going through a separation and divorce today? What would your advice be today?
Just keep persevering. Don't let the dark thoughts overwhelm you. Any evil thoughts that creep in your mind, just let them pass away. Don't try to find a good peaceful thought that you can cling to, whatever that hope is, whatever. Say die another day. Like just keep trucking along. Just be a soldier and just.
And so it sounds like to me too that the court system, really what they were doing was they were giving you a bill in order for you, they were basically placing a cost of how much it was going to cost you in order to gain the emotional access towards your children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in saying that, I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is, if that's what they're doing to you, other men who are going through the throes of the court system, how would you be able to help them today if you were in that place? Like if you knew somebody was going through that kind of bullshit, how would you help them through that? Because I think that there's more support through peer support than there is through the court system, because the court system isn't telling you shit.
No.
And it sounded like to me that what you were saying over and over again is you felt helpless. If you had enough finances in order to fight it, you would have fought it. However, there was not enough finances because your alimony is taking 65% of your paycheck.
Yeah, and I think it becomes a dangerous game that if you do engage it, some people will say it works,
What works? Like the fact.
The legal system,
Yeah.
like seeking justice and all that. Like for me, I'm pretty. I wouldn't really engage it too much because I think it probably make things worse, and I feel it's a way that it monetizes conflict. So there's a conflict there, and they just make money off the conflict. And the more angrier you become going through it, the more money they make.
Well, that's an interesting
So
perspective.
if you can emotionally, that's why I say you can claim those good thoughts and just surrender and just whatever. It feels emasculating. It feels like it's taking your very life away to let it. And then just, because then eventually the dark emotions will pass away and you can.
So another question I'd like to throw at you is this. Your ex basically made a decision that you weren't allowed to be around your children. Were you ever afforded an opportunity to make a decision whether the guy that she's with was allowed to be around your children?
I guess theoretically I could if I had the money and the resources, but I don't think so.
So what happens?
It would be no.
So what happens if you were to tell your ex that you don't want him around your kids? What would happen then?
They'll have to go to court, I guess.
Wow.
So it's like they call it no fault divorce. So basically, like what I've had to do is realize that's no fault divorce. So the reason why I have to pay this monetary penalty is this is the penance for deciding to get married instead of I committed a fault and have to make reparations for her. It's just that she decided to cash out, and
that's it.
This is the consequences of her decision, and so you just deal with it.
Wow.
Yeah.
But you really still to this day don't have any control of who's in your children's life when they're.
I don't get any say in their religious upbringing, their friends, their schooling, their extracurricular. It's just you pay the bill and you shut up.
On average, in the last year, how many times have you seen your children?
Like, what do you mean?
Like in 2018, how many times have you been able to see your children this year?
Maybe a dozen times, maybe. I was out of town for quite a few months.
So why is it that you have to work out of town?
Because there's no work in town in the field that I'm in.
Yeah, I guess.
So in order to facilitate the payments that's been decreed, that's where I go. That's what I do. It's just the nature of my work. I haven't really had the time to really sit and think about what I want to do with the rest of my life. It's just I feel this. If I want to avoid jail, this is. So it's like
because you'll go to jail. So you're suggesting that you'll go to jail if you don't make your alimony / child.
Well, you have a driver's license and your passport. I don't have a passport, but I mean, I have your driver's license revoked in order to make the money, and then they'll just throw me the possibilities I could go to jail or garnish my wages. And when you're in jail, the debt for child support is still taxed on, like it doesn't go away. So I know there are guys who don't pay it and they hadn't faced the consequences, but I guess I haven't had the balls to go that route, or I find that too risky for.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's financial suicide.
Oh, for sure.
That to me is mind-blowing.
It's not really suicide. It's more kind of homicide. It's not. It wasn't. I didn't do it to myself. Someone did it to me. So it's.
And you're not alone in this.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there's many men that go through this.
Oh, for sure.
And so let me ask you, what was your solace, or what was it that you were clinging on to as you were going through the hell of this?
I guess it just eventually it went from utter darkness to kind of 50 Shades of Grey, and then it just started kind of the rancor eventually just kind of dissipated, and it just started evening out, and I surrendered, and then I saw other guys who were going through the same thing, and some seemed to do better than others, and then I started empathizing with celebrities. I thought they were in a special case of their own, but like, no, it's the same with them. And you see whether they're rich or poor, what the size of the number doesn't matter. It's what happens. I think that's the experience becomes very much the same.
Wow. Do you think that there'll ever be a way out of this for you?
With the age of my children,
Yeah.
Eventually attrition, I guess.
Wow. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
That's another
10 years away or whatever.
Yeah.
8
That's
years.
crazy.
Yeah.
And you still have to save for college.
I guess in theory it's hard to say. I'm not trying to wrestle with that.
Selling crack really looks like an option, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, there's always jail with that too.
I mean, it's just fascinating to me that this is what's happening. And if you look at the suicide rate of men, it's never been higher.
Well, they say divorced men are the most prone people to commit suicide. So men are 4 times more likely than women to commit suicide, and they're 8 times more likely after they get divorced. So.
And the system itself, I mean, I grew up in a single parent family, right? My father chose not to be in my life, but effectively, this is the court system saying, "Fuck you, you're not a part of it." Yeah. That's what it is.
We're part of the political zeitgeist. I mean, it's not like it's just a legal thing. That's straight from the politicians to the media it's just our culture.
And here we are now. You're a willing and wanting to be dad.
Yeah.
It's not like you've separated yourself from it.
Yeah.
Yet you're still alienated from their life.
Oh, for sure.
What's the interaction like between you and your children today?
I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
They like me. I love them. We play with each other. It's nothing too deep. I think it's just playing. Like, I don't really have to parent them, so I guess that's the burden that's been relieved from me by having to pay it. I don't have to worry about their location.
That's fucked up.
Yeah.
That's fucked up,
so
man.
Their stepfather be their father.
I mean, there's so much shit. There's so much shit that you learn from being a parent raising your children.
Yeah.
That's really where the emotional impact comes through.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, I mean, fuck, that's the balls that have been cut off.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, as much as the burden of raising children. Well, fuck yeah, it's a burden, but that's why we have kids.
Yeah.
That's why you have them. You have them because you want to do that kind of shit with them, right? I mean, it's not like you had them because you wanted some fucking life-size dolls that, like a chia pet, you water it and it fucking grows. Like, that's not why somebody has children.
Yeah.
And the byproduct of something that's so toxic as a relationship, really the ones who are faced with the poisonous fruits are the kids. I mean, they don't know what a fucking and you aren't even afforded an opportunity about the opinion of the relationship that they're seeing in their own house.
Mm-hmm.
So let's look at what you've done emotionally and mentally for your own self. Have you done anything in order to change from the person who you were to the person that you are today?
Yeah, I've done a lot of. I did try some psychological counseling. I don't think it really helped. The big thing was forgiving my ex. That I didn't really know how to do that. I thought I would just let bygones be bygones, but that didn't work. There's a lot of anger, a lot of hatred, a lot of rancor, just seething, poisonous buildup. I try to ignore it and try to, paper it over, but it was just there. And eventually, what that freedom came is that emotional freedom was just letting her know what she did to me and how that made me feel. Because I guess it was a way of being intimate, saying that you did hurt me and this is how you hurt me. And it's like almost acknowledging the pain to myself. I think I try to ignore how she hurt me. And by actually facing how she did hurt me, it was that these wounds were real. And by doing it, I thought, the reaction was from her, it was very soul crushing. I don't think she understood exactly what she had done to me. So it was beneficial both ways, I think, that way.
Huh.
And that was a real helpful turning point for me emotionally, spiritually, just to say, it's been said, it's been forgiven. I've acknowledged what's happened. She knows what's happened. We may see it differently, but at least I'm more at peace with the wounds, I guess, and I'm able to move on.
How is your self-esteem before and your self-esteem today on a scale of 1 to 10? 10 being the high, 1 being the low.
I'd probably say I was a 2 or 3 back then, and I'm probably 7 or 8 now. I guess I don't want to cap myself out now. I always think there's always room for improvement, and I like to be surprised by the future. Maybe there's something more to grow, but I'm just allowing life to happen, and it was a harsh learning environment, but.
So let me ask you, if you were to go out on a date now, what's that like telling the other partner or the person that you're dating at the time that you're divorced and you have 4 children?
I'm not sure. I haven't really gone out of my way to find a new partner, and I feel more secure just being by myself and willing to sacrifice my emotions and finances again.
So let me ask you this then. If you were to date again, would you tell them? Like, would you tell the person that you're dating? Like, because it may come up that you might date. Do you feel that you would tell them that you have 4 children and divorcing
maybe
again?
Not on the first date, but
the second or third?
Eventually, as you peel back the layers, because you're just getting to know a person. If they do ask, I tell. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a charlatan, and I would expect my date. I would expect that they would say the same things about themselves. It would be a relationship of honesty, that not just.
So now let me ask you: would you tell your ex that you were in a relationship? Like, if you became serious with somebody, let's say they're not even living with you, would you tell your ex that you have a significant other, so to say, at that moment? Or,
probably.
Yeah. Did she afford you the same kind of respect when she was dating the guy that she's with now?
In what way?
Like, did she tell you that she was dating this guy, saying that we're living together or whatever the situation is?
Eventually, it wasn't at first.
Because he is living with your children, right?
Oh,
yeah. That to me just seems so bizarre. Yeah. Like, you don't even know who this guy is.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, we eventually found out who it was, but it wasn't right away. But that's fair. That's not.
But again, there's that mutual respect, in my opinion. That's just strange, right? Yeah, like there's no mutual respect.
That's why we're not together.
Yeah. I mean, and I guess the other thing is like, I guess my question is, would you respect her in that capacity, even though she may it's not reciprocal on her end? But would you give her that?
Not. I would say not. It would be more as an aside than an announcement. It'd just be like, yeah, there's a chick there. Like, so what?
Look at this cool guy, eh? Yeah. What about the kids? How would you go about that? I mean, because let's face it, this is the new way of the world, right? I mean, we're having kids with people, and the next thing you know, mommy 2, 3, 4, and 5 is coming up.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Oh, for sure.
And so I guess my question is obviously the kids in this situation have seen some pretty atrocious things.
Yeah.
And in saying that, how are we now going to soften the load when we introduce mommy 1? Or sorry, I guess now mommy 2 and mommy 3, because mommy 1 they're living with. You know what I mean? Like, how would we introduce that in a soft way? Is there a way to introduce that softly towards the kids?
Say this to be a woman. This is her name. We're dating.
You can call her mom or you can call her Jane. It doesn't fucking matter. Slap her on the ass. Shit.
It's just that when you're over at my place, you'll be our religion. Over at their place, you'll be your. So sure, it's.
Let me ask you: have you ever had any of your kids sleep over?
No.
What's the exposure time to your kids?
Usually a couple hours per visit.
Wow. So you went from being around them all of the time to
a couple hours every 2 weeks or so.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Sometimes 3 hours.
That's crazy. So any other positive thoughts you could give men who are faced with this issue?
Just keep plugging away and just eventually, allow yourself to be healed. Sometimes it doesn't feel like you're getting healed, and maybe some guys won't recover. I can't really speak to them. I just felt that I was given the grace of having this healing. And
because I mean, let's face it, we can sit here bullshit with each other all day long about how we can fix the fucking system, but it's never gonna fix. It's never gonna change.
It can fix, but I mean, I think it's a bigger problem than us. And if there's a person willing to take up the crusade, rah rah, and then there's always the unintended consequences of the fix, and it's not, this is.
So, and that's why I like to gear more towards helping the individual.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, looking at what the system is it's just a bunch of bullshit. And that, like I said, in my opinion, I don't think it's ever going to change.
Yeah.
And so it's best to be able to give support to the individual who's going through it. I'm not sitting here advocating that the family court system needs to change. As much as I think it does, that's a lost leader for me. It's a lost cause. I've already wasted enough fucking air about it.
Yeah.
And so that's why I really want to concentrate and be concerned with the individual who's going through that. What would you suggest for the parents of a divorcee guy while they're going through that? What would you suggest? How could parents best support that guy going through that issue?
Probably just to encourage them and say, let them know they love them, and just to have that same type of resignation, I guess, not try to impose your will on everything, just roll with the punches.
Because it's pretty fucked up, right? I mean, it's a fucked up situation to be in. Like,
yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, and it seems, I mean, I'm sure women are bearing a lot of emotional bullshit going through a divorce as well, right?
Yeah.
But it seems to me that there's emotional supports there because women are generally with the kids, especially in the system that we're faced with here in Canada, and I even think down in America. That's just the situation of what it is. So they're afforded that. Whereas when it comes to men, we're really left all on our own, and if you don't come, like, I mean, in your case, you were estranged from your parents. So really you're faced with the deal that you have to get over that estrangement, and then getting over that estrangement, you also have to now seek out their support in order to be half fucking okay to deal with your divorce.
Right.
And they don't even know how to support you because they really have 7 years worth of time or 8 years worth of time lost. They don't even know what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I mean, I'm not saying that you're a bad guy, but I also know that we're human and we're fucking biased in our story.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if we can both agree to the fact that she has her story, you have your story, and somewhere in the middle lies the truth. But
sometimes the truth may be in both the stories. It's just that they're experienced differently.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we went along the line of your emotional welfare looking at this.
Yeah.
The context of the bullshit that happened doesn't matter. What matters is you bared it, you got through it, and today you're carrying on with your life. And it's been a wound. That, in my opinion, holds a lot of value. And other men can look at that. Would you consider other men talking about what happened, what it was like, and where they're at today in order to encourage other men as they're going through the situation? Because let's face it, systematically, divorce is a part of the system now. That's just what it is. And I don't think it's ever going away. I don't think that's ever going to change.
Yeah.
I don't think marriage is for life. I just don't think that that's what it is. There's 1 out of the 5, statistically speaking, that makes it.
Yeah.
And so what I would suggest is that men need to go and, like, I almost think that there needs to be a divorcee support group, like, where men meet 3 times a week and talk about the bullshit that they're going through.
For me, it's work.
Yeah, but even going to work, that's not. I mean, is that really a healthy way? I mean, you're talking about guys who are. I guess it is.
It is, because it distracts you from it's challenging, but eventually you realize this is a good and healthy way to distract yourself from, you know, your crushing despair. That there's something to keep striving for. It's not all about money. It's about applying yourself that you know how and helping other people. And it's very basic. It's nothing too highfalutin, high theological, philosophical. It's just you put your head down, ass up, and it gives you something to do, gives you something to focus on. Even though your mind is distracted, 55 ways, it it's a therapeutic way, I think, of coping with the chaos of your life.
See, but what blows me away about that is that the statistics of men dying by suicide are fucking off the radar right now. Like, it's crazy.
It's scary to actually listen, like think about it.
Yeah, like, it's crazy. And I'm not going to be one of those guys who say, well, the system is killing these guys. Because I don't believe that. I believe this. The system is... Well, and I mean, to blame the system is just taking on a way of victimization.
Yeah.
You know? And I don't agree with playing the victim in my own life.
Right.
What I do agree with, though, is trying to figure out where those supports are. And obviously there's a large majority of men who aren't afforded the situation that you were afforded at work. You know, they're isolated or whatever their work environment looks like, right? And let's face it, for you to talk on an emotional level with a guy, like I go to meetings. And in saying that I go to meetings, I mean, I'm able to share things to people, very intimate, emotional things with people that are complete fucking strangers, and I'm never going to walk into them again.
Yeah.
So there's a solace in that. And I think what we're missing in the context of work is you are going to see him again, and you are going to run into them again. So the likelihood of a guy, really breaking down in that context of sharing, because in my opinion, and this is only my opinion, and it's not professional, is this: the guys who are committing suicide, they need that emotional outburst. They need that.
Well, it's like that form of intimacy that they just.
Yeah.
That's usually what a woman's job is for, is to have that emotional sympathizing, the petting, I understand, you can share with me, the vulnerability there, in a healthy relationship. And to have that suddenly taken away, it's like, well, how do you cope now?
Yeah.
I said work because for me it was there.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually I found my group of friends that I could relate to and I could just unload. I probably would have liked to, eventually, I started meeting other women, stuff like that, and you can have that feminine touch that, it becomes a form of privation.
Well, and I think there's also this piece. We as men are inherently codependent, in this regard. When you're in a marriage, you do depend on each other in order to get through life. I mean, if we're going to look at marriage, that's what it's meant to be. Two people become as one, okay? Yeah. And then all of a sudden you're broken apart. And now on the man side of this issue, because that's the side that we're talking about, is, in my opinion, a group of support of complete strangers is what's needed, because we are codependent at that moment. And to learn how to become independent almost feels futile. Like, your arm, I know in my own case, it felt like my arm was cut off. I literally lost a part of my body. That's how I felt when me and my significant other, my common law, had separated. That's how I felt. And that was a 4-year relationship, And so in saying that, I mean, sure, we had divorce, but it was very quick and nasty. She got everything. That's just what happened in my situation. Yeah. And I think, like I said, it's not a one-off in men. And that's why I really believe that there needs to be men support groups. I mean, women have them in the context of their feminist groups and their woman studies and all of these things. And I really believe that men need the same thing. I mean, we're killing ourselves, whether it be suicide, flat out suicide, or addiction. Either way, we are taking ourselves away from our families. And being a product of a one-parent single family, I didn't have a fucking family. I didn't have a dad. I was continuously looking for that male role model throughout my life.
Paternalistic.
That's right.
Yeah.
So is it any wonder why I became some alpha domineering man for a majority of my life? It's only been the last 4 or 5 years that I've come to understand how to internalize my emotions, understand them, and be able to not have them predict what my actions are going to be, right? And not allow myself to become emotionally intelligent is the way how I like to put it, right? Not be ego driven in this fucking maniac. I'm still definitely an alpha male, but I'm not some fucking crazy nut bar that I used to be. That's just not who I am. I have changed in that respect. But the reason why I was so off the scale alpha wise was because I didn't have a fucking dad. Now here we are doing the same thing to the kids now. I mean, this is no longer an epidemic. An epidemic means that it's a beginning, and it's at a grand scale. This is the system now. That's just what it is. It's just what it is. And the only thing, like I said, we will never change the system. There's no point in talking about it. The only thing that we can really do is prepare and teach men how to deal. And I think the only way that we can really do that is by having support groups, just like women have feminist groups, so on. I think men need to really have that stuff. It's a huge piece that we're missing.
They just gotta. It becomes a way of seeking, because it's not like it'll be beamed into your living room. You gotta go outside your house. You gotta start walking. You gotta start seeking.
Yeah, but like, let's look at it. When women go through this system, they're given pamphlets and information of support networks and systems that they can go to. Are men? Were you given any information of support that you could get to in a time of mental crisis?
Yeah, they gave me a sheet, but it wasn't. I didn't find it helpful. They tried.
Did they put anybody who could talk to you one-on-one, where you weren't being
patronized?
Yeah.
Kind of. But it was, I think they're just as helpless as I am. It's just something you got to go through.
The system is the system.
Yeah, and I mean.
See, but this is my point is that I think that the supports that are afforded need to be afforded the same on both sides, whether you be a man or a woman. Okay, I really think that needs to happen. And I also believe, just on a personal level, like I give you many kudos for being able to recognize that you had to change, and I think that's a huge, aha moment in regards to succumbing to surrendering, realizing that the way that you were going about things was not going to be a benefit to you in the future, and I think that's a huge deal, right? And I think in a supportive construct of a group or whatever, that can become or help a man get to that place where they're able to say, yeah, I want to be the best that I can be. Because like I said, we're codependent. In my opinion, I feel like men are codependent after a divorce. And I also feel that because of that codependency, we spiral in depression until, let's face it, when you're depressed, is it easy to pick up the phone and ask for help? It's a fucking 20,000 pound fucking phone. And your pride and your ego will stop you from asking any other man for help. Because we have these pretenses of what men are. And that's why I think that really has to change. Like why is it AA members going to AA meetings? Because we fucking know that they're there. As drunk as we are, the first 2-3 meetings are hard, but after that it gets easier. But the fact of the matter is there's just as many men getting divorced as there is alcoholics getting sober. It's the fucking same idea. So if it's the same idea, in my opinion, we need to look at something like that. And I think, put up a bulletin in the courthouse by the family court. If you're a man in trouble needing to seek help, please come here Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday nights from this time to this time.
Right.
Come reach out.
It could be divorces anonymous.
Yeah, I mean, I think there needs to be something of that structure. You know, like I said, women have that. They have that. They have groups where they bring their kids and they get to talk to other women who are going through the same things that they're going through. You know, you don't need to have a psychiatrist in that room. People just need to have, let's face it, if you had an avenue to steam to people who didn't fucking matter, how beneficial would that have been in your particular situation?
It might have felt. I think it's there was a recognized program that I think that's what it ultimately boils down to is like there was a program that helped me, and this is how it helped me, and then you're like, oh, this guy looks like he's got it together, so then you become inspired to take up the program. But like it's one thing to have a program, but if it's just a program and it's just you go through the motions, and it's like it doesn't help me, didn't because there were programs, there were counselors, and that I went through that I tried, but in my estimation, I didn't think they were that good. They had good intentions. It's just I think
Well, and I also think there's an added value. I mean, going through the bullshit that I've gone through, how the fuck do I listen to somebody who's never been through what I've been through?
Yeah.
Like, you're talking from some fucking book.
Yeah.
Right? I don't give a shit about your book.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I think that there's a solace in men talking to men about the bullshit that they went through. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I think it's just like seeing that person. I think it's seeing real life examples is probably would be I would say probably the most helpful. Like if I met a guy, I went through it. This is how I got through it. Well, it becomes a way of clinging to hope, and I think that's kind of maybe our biggest thing that you're trying to during those dark moments is you just want to have an inkling of hope. How do you get hope? Like, do you just button down and become super religious? Do you find a person that inspires you? Do you, like, however it is, it's just something you got to do.
And so the last thing that I think we're gonna throw out there is people giving legal advice. I mean, your lawyer's expensive.
Yeah.
You know what, $500 an hour, whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
Okay. Don't go to your fucking parents looking for legal advice. Do you want to? I'm leading in this question, but do you want to add to that, Aaron?
Well, it's just when people give legal opinions, sometimes it comes across as advice, but you have to recognize that they're amateurs and their emotions can speak louder than their actual meat of their advice. I'm sure the lawyer is expensive, but if he's in the game, he knows what the rules are at that time. And it's a very complex, it's very in-depth, it's very arcane. They speak a different language than your normal. It's an industry. That's the best way I could describe it. And, it adds to that despair and that, but you just surrender to it and just let them do their little jiggly dance up front, and you try to pretend to respect it. That's probably the hard part in this time, because you think in a court of justice there would be a thing of being treated with respect and dignity, that you're innocent until proven guilty, but in this situation it isn't, and you think all the things you ever believed about the law aren't true at this moment, and that's a hard pill to swallow. The matter, because it's so emotional. It's whatever the politics and the legalese of it. That's besides the point. It's the emotional thing that they're capitalizing on.
So let me ask you this then, in suggestion to parents. Should they be giving or trying to give legal advice?
Well, giving legal advice if they're not a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
They should be a lawyer, but I mean, you talk to a real lawyer, they'll give you the advice. Let them, like I said, just let them go through their little. It sounds like a dog and pony show or whatever, but just let them do it. Resign yourself, just surrender, and the people who offer you, this is what you ought to do, this is what you sure yeah. But you count your pennies before you go to war type of thing. Like, it's the same thing as the military.
So let me ask you this as well. Being the client, because effectively as the client, you are the boss in the relationship between you and your lawyer.
Right.
fighting the emotional game, because I know you and I had in-depth conversations about fighting a legal battle with emotion.
Yeah.
That's a bad fucking road to go down.
For sure.
That's I mean, the second that we go into the place where,
That's just money.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
I described it earlier, how it's a game that monetizes strife.
yeah.
So the more strife and more rancor, emotion there is, the more money they make.
So let me ask you in a judgment, if the lawyer is basically amping you up. See, like,
Yes and no. He's amping you up if he can squeeze more money out of you, but if he's a good lawyer and recognizes that he'll try to find ways to placate your emotions, and so just recognize they're greedy. They're hungry just like anybody else.
I was told once by a family lawyer that they won't take men. They would rather take women because women are easier to work with in court, because the likelihood of them getting ruled against is highly unlikely. Like, that's fucked up. Like, how do you? I mean, the system is geared, and that's why I said there's no point. There is no point in changing the system. The system is the system.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is to prepare men for what they're about to endure.
Yeah.
Right? Do you think that you've done that here today? Do you think that you've given sound advice for men to be able to endure this system?
Like in a practical sense, yes, but the emotional reaction, I can't predict what they're going to go through. I just know it's not going to be easy, and just to roll with the punches. Like, if you've never been in a physical fight before, and you get the living shit kicked out of you, it's going to feel a little bit different for everyone, and I can't really fully describe. You just got to fully experience it, and then you come back out of it and you realize, okay, that's what that felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And here's some ways to mitigate the shit kicking, but that's why I say the surrender, because it's a way of allowing the emotions just to ebb away, not you don't want to monetize the emotions, because that's essentially what's happening in a legal process that way. So just allow it and just vent somewhere else. Punch a wall, a box, or whatever, punching bag, and then come back, try to talk to your rational self, and then, okay, this is what I need to do.
I was listening to Joe Rogan, not that I want to really plug him here, but he said you should go jerk off and then make a decision.
Well, I'm not sure you want to do that, because then you're just going to turn soft, but you just turn into a woman.
Literally turn soft, right?
Yeah. You kind of want to have a little bit of, I mean, it's a rough go on them.
Well, I thank you for your insight on this crazy fucking world that we live in divorce and family, and what that looks like. I'm sure we'll have you again later on in the future, because I'll bet you 10 to 1 that we're gonna get some serious fucking hate, and we're also gonna get some good questions about what was spoken about here today. And like I said, I thank you for your candor and your honesty, and your ability to be able to share this very needed message to many men who are going through this. So with that, we'll end it. It's about an hour and 40 minutes in. So like I said, I thank you, and we'll talk to you again, Aaron.
Thank you very much.
Have a wonderful evening. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.